Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to the SFL YouTube channel. I have my partner Julian on today, who has also been doing e-commerce for a little over 10 years now. His main role here at the agency is kind of handling the strategic direction and project management for some of the bigger accounts that we handle in-house. So today what we wanted to do is just kind of go through each of our top 3 factors that we've identified are necessary or essential to growing online stores. So both of us have, like I said, been doing this for quite a while, and we've been able to identify, okay, every store that we work with that is easy to grow or seems to really consistently blow through those benchmarks and hit their goals has one of, if not all 3 of these factors. So without further ado, we'll kind of jump in. We'll take turns going back and forth on our list and hopefully also give you guys some insight onto how you can take those things into account and implement some of these strategies for your own brand. So Julian, why don't you get us started with your third item on the list and kind of let us know what your thoughts are there.
Definitely. Appreciate the intro. So I'm going to actually take it a step back and consider my first factor for brands who are starting out. Now, I think one of the most important things when you're starting is you want to differentiate through your product and you want to build a brand with a story. Like I said, this is more for brands who have been starting out, not someone who is down the line, but you could always consider these if you've already started. But with so many brands that are out there and so many products and people being bombarded and brands trying to capture their attention, you want to offer a product that's completely different than the rest. And you want to have a brand that has a story to tell. This doesn't mean you can't take an older product that's probably already out there in the market and revamp it with something new. But if you're looking to take up some market share, why not start with a very focused niche and a product that's different from the rest? It will allow you to stand apart from a lot of your competitors, and it can help your marketing dollars go a bit further. The other side of this, like I said, is storytelling. I think now we live in an age of brands who are starting to consider this more and more. In our own advertising, what we see on TV, a lot of the times is, buy this. I think we put a little bit more emphasis during the Super Bowl. People take the time to think of the overall message, make it funny, and really impact the person that's watching. And, usually people, when they have this affinity towards a brand, they'll tend to buy more and buy longer. And some of the things you might want to consider when trying to do this is, like I said in the beginning, is start with your product. You want to differentiate through the design. So whether you're entering an emerging niche or not, when you start off and you're showcasing this online, whether it be through Facebook or just organic, it will be cheap. It's a new product, new brand. It looks nice. People are going to be attracted to it nonetheless. But after a while, you'll start to see that maybe your CPAs are starting to get a little bit more expensive. That shine from being a new brand is going to start to wear off. And I think that's where it really becomes important for your brand to have a product that stands apart through the different aspects surrounding.
And sorry to cut you off, but I think something we see a lot of the times is, especially working with the clients we do, we have a lot of CBD brands, a lot of Delta 8 brands, things like that. And when the product is the product, right, and it's similar and it's kind of like a magnesium supplement, it's the same thing. You can have one that's maybe more bioavailable or it's slightly different formulation, but sometimes when it's a basic product like that, differentiating it can be tough. So I think it's important that you mentioned sometimes it's not necessarily the base of the product itself, but it's the way that it's branded, or it's the design aesthetically of the product. Or for example, something that I've seen a lot of brands doing is taking an ingredient that is trending like a CBD that may not have as many opportunities to differentiate from other competitors, and combining it with other trending ingredients like a turmeric or magnesium or something like that. So it's kind of just understanding the product that you have, the audience that you're going after, and how can you combine that product with different benefits or solutions that same audience is looking for. One CBD might be directly marketed to stoner audience, whereas another one might be marketed towards like the athlete audience. And obviously everything kind of trickles down from there. So it doesn't mean necessarily that you can't have the same product or ingredient as another brand, but the way you approach it should be unique and be able to kind of separate here.
Yeah, that's a good point. And one aspect of this as well in differentiating your product is a lot of the times, we've been on these calls together, we might have someone that we're talking to that's very imaginative And at the end of the day, it's their passion, their idea. So they might already come to the table with a whole complete product line of 12 SKUs. And sometimes, we have in our own experience with the brands that we've launched ourselves, possibly starting with one product first might be ideal.
Right.
It allows you to focus all your efforts, all your time, put all the details, put all your dollars into one item, making it much more effective of a funnel and a brand message. You can perfect it. You can optimize it. If we think about Nike, when Phil Knight got the shoe from the, I forget the Tiger brand, right? That he brought over here and then developed his first moon shoe, I think it was called. From there, now we have all these different types of Nikes.
Right.
And using that as a segue, the storytelling aspect of it is another important part, because if you tie that with the product differential compared to your competitors, what keeps them coming back is, the vibe they get from your brand. And I think now today it's gotten a little bit easier, whereas before it's probably a little bit tough. But you could use the buzzwords and pushing the negatives of why you should, that's always going to work. But again, the meaningful stuff is what's always going to have people coming back. A good book on this is, Guy Kawasaki's Enchantment, The Art of Changing Hearts, Minds, and Actions. Really good book on the value or the power in delivering value through great causes. It kind of ties into with Apple. And, once you do have this story, one way you should try to implement it is all around your marketing efforts. So your website, your homepage, your About Us, your product page and descriptions. A story is a little bit more impactful than the fact or benefit behind the product itself.
Right.
You should also probably consider combining images and videos with your story as well. So that's not just, let's say, an About Us like copy, for example.
And that ties directly into what I put as my number 3, which is creative output. So at some point, your brand is going to need the ability to consistently produce creative content, whether that's written copy or new website designs for testing or videos to use on ads or to use for your social media channels or whatever the case. At some point, you're going to need a system that can constantly pump that out, be able to learn from metrics and how different creatives perform and optimize that system on an ongoing basis in order to be successful. And I think one of the biggest points to make here is that there's a way to do that for brands of all sizes. At some point, you may have to make the sacrifice and do something that maybe you didn't originally set out to do, or get out of your comfort zone and make content yourself or something along those lines. But there's a solution at every budget. If you literally have zero money for content, you yourself can start to produce content. Maybe you have a friend that's more comfortable getting in front of the camera and they can produce content for you, or you get an intern that's willing to learn and kind of, you have them working on your social media and also creating the videos for it. There's also very low cost options, such as, what we use for a lot of clients would be trend.io, where you can buy, for example, 10 UGC videos for like $500 a month. Whatever the system is, it needs to be able to consistently pump out content that you can implement into your testing procedure, which is, something that I'll get into later on my list as well. But it's absolutely necessary. And I think that all marketers would say that it's probably the number one thing that they look for in a client that they know they're going to be able to successfully grow and scale. And I think it's probably the number one roadblock that we run into with clients when we're having trouble scaling is we just don't have enough content to test, and maybe that content isn't of the quality that we're looking for. Something else that I think a lot of brand owners have to get over, especially in the beginning, is that, and you see this more so in fashion or luxury brands, but maybe they're not at the point where they can afford the quality of the content that they think the brand has to have. So they end up just not making anything.
Yeah.
I've run into that scenario with a couple of brands where it's like they envision themselves as a Chanel or a Gucci, but they're bootstrapping it with a $5,000 starting fund. And so they're just not making content because they're not willing to go with anything cheaper than what they can afford right now. So I think it's kind of overcoming that in the beginning, especially for smaller brands, allowing your content system to scale with you, starting out more organically and hiring more professional content creators as you go, leveraging influencers and things like that, because that content ultimately is going to make all of your other channels perform better. If you go into your Facebook ad account and you're just optimizing Facebook ads, that's only going to affect your Facebook ads. But if you have really good content that you're constantly producing, it supports the brand awareness. And like I said, it can make every other channel that's feeding traffic into your store perform a little bit better. So,
Right. And then even on top of that, like if you've been doing this for a couple months now and you kind of have it in a process, once you systematize it, you can kind of have this on tap and just have content being churned out every month.
yeah, and I would even go as far as to say, if you're somebody that's thinking about starting a brand, if you haven't figured that part out, that has to be something that you need to figure out before you go into it, before you start hiring agencies or putting, funding into anything else, is this business is only going to be viable if I can somehow produce content. And like I said, if you don't have the budget for it, then you need to figure out what that solution is to getting that content at what you can't afford.
Right.
And so I'll kind of go next into my number two, because like I said, this feeds directly into it, and that is the willingness to test. So when most people think about creative testing or A/B testing, they think about either the ads themselves, for example, testing different videos, different hooks within those videos or whatever the case is, or maybe they go a step further and they think about conversion rate optimization and testing on their website. But the truth is, there are opportunities to test at every level of the funnel, and each one of those opportunities can help you incrementally improve performance. So let's look at the example of you're going to run a specific offer on a specific product at 50% off. That funnel alone, you have, okay, at the top of the funnel, you have your Facebook ads. In the middle area, you have, okay, the landing page that you're driving them to. Let's say somebody does make a purchase, you have your post-purchase email automation series, and maybe that has 4 or 5 emails in it.
Right.
In just that one campaign, in that one funnel, there's multiple stages that can be A/B tested and constantly optimized. So at one point, at the very top, it's, okay, which products are we testing and which offers are we testing? So maybe you start out testing a 50% off on product A, a 50% off on product B, and a 50% off on product C. That's kind of your first level of testing. Let's say after that, you identify a winning offer. Okay, we're going to go with offer B. Now you can test 3 different sets of creatives for that same offer. Now you can test 3 different versions of the landing page for that same offer. When someone purchases in that post-purchase email flow, you can test the subject lines to optimize the open rate. You can test the elements within the email to optimize the click-through rate and the purchase rate. So I think understanding all of those elements of a campaign or of a funnel or an omni-channel strategy, how to A/B test each of those and what metrics you're looking to optimize in each of those A/B tests is another big reason that a lot of the brands we work with are successful, because obviously that's something that we do all throughout the marketing strategy. And it's something that, even the best marketers, people that have been doing this you could be doing this for 100 years and you can have a pretty good idea of what's going to work, but you never truly know. It's even me today, I'm still sometimes surprised by what the outcome of an A/B test is, because maybe what I would have thought initially is going to end up being the winner isn't. And so I like when I run into scenarios like that, because it just reinforces the fact that if we weren't testing, we'd probably be leaving a lot of money on the table, because a lot of times what I would have went with off the first impression ends up not being what was going to be the best choice. So it's always something that time and time again proves to incrementally improve performance, and something that I think is absolutely necessary, especially when you want to go to the higher levels of revenue, right? You can kind of get to 50,000 a month, maybe even $100,000 a month without really heavily testing. But once you kind of start to hit those ceilings and it gets a little tougher to scale, you can really unlock that by testing every stage of that funnel, improving average order value, conversion rate, everything else besides just focusing on what's happening in the ad account.
Yeah. And to go back what you were saying about running these tests and coming across things that surprise you, it amazes me all the time as well. And how many calls have we had with clients, brand owners, where, hey, they may have a point. Something may look better than we think, or in our own heads, we think this landing page is going to crush. You launch the test and it comes out that the constant thing that you had originally, the simple landing page worked way better than the one that has all the reviews and the images and the GIFs. It's amazing sometimes when you see really what works or converts the best.
Right. And because of that reason, I very rarely will tell a client now, like, I don't think that's going to work. Let's not do it, because I might be wrong. I'll instead say, hey, let's say a client wants to do a different version of a landing page. I'll say, okay, well, let's build that out, and to soft launch it, we'll send 20% of the traffic to that page for the first 2 weeks. Just confirm, make sure that it's at least performing as well as the current one before we swap it out. Same thing with like new website designs, anything like that. So I'm of the opinion that I never know 100% whether something is going to work or not. So it's always best to just test it and find out. And that's why it's so important to have those tools and things at your disposal, which, to kind of give a little bit more value, one of the things that we've been using a lot lately is Shoplift. It's an app on Shopify specifically, which just makes that whole A/B testing process a lot easier. So if you're on Shopify, I would definitely check that one out.
Totally
But
agree.
yeah, Shoplift is probably my favorite Shopify app right now. That one and the last one that I'll get into as well. We only went over your three, right? What was your two?
Okay, so my two, kind of around the same, but you want to have a very high converting and a profitable top of funnel. This way you can consistently add traffic and new customers to your store. And it's usually one of the most important aspects that brand owners think about, how they're going to do it and how can they do it at a cost-effective rate. And there's so many different ways for an e-commerce store. Like you said in the beginning, we've been doing this for so long, but I actually started just in sales and in organic SEO for local businesses. And once I moved over to e-commerce, I was just shocked and overwhelmed by the amount of things or strategies or concepts or initiatives you can do to acquire a customer to not only come to your store, but to make that first purchase. And the elephant in the room, I think that one of the easiest and most popular ways nowadays is TikTok. I honestly don't think it's going to go anywhere. But it's one of those platforms out of all the social platforms that it's the easiest to get eyes and go viral. For new brand owners, it's honestly great too, because you don't have to spend as much. Maybe when you go into Facebook, you might consider Facebook ads, right? Which we'll cover in a second. But on TikTok, like you said earlier, whether it's you or a friend who's not camera shy, creating simple videos and posting them on TikTok every day, which is what I would recommend, doesn't take too much time. You can fit in an hour, max, maybe 2 if you'd like, on creating these concepts, filming them and shooting them and posting them. A couple things to consider is TikTok makes it actually easy for you to see what's working and what isn't. If it's a controversial, trendy video that leverages some of this stuff that they're showing you, you can get by and you can get impressions and eyes and views really easily. I think they use the Creator Studio. You can go in there and check all the different videos that they showcase for you to copy trends. You can even use and leverage their most viral music or sounds for your video. And let's say you pick a sound that doesn't really match your video. A hack that I found is if you lower the volume of that sound to 0, you'll still get the juice from the virality of the sound that you attach to the video itself. So leveraging TikTok is honestly great. And you could also get a lot of engagement. Let's say you add a question in your caption, like, what do you guys think? Comment below. It's similar things that we probably already know. And then before I can move on, make it a routine to check what's going on there. Like I said, if you have a business account, a professional account, they'll give you the views of your videos. How long did someone view it? At what second is everyone leaving? Using all of this allows you to kind of re-strategize and see what's working and what's not. Another part or another way to essentially capture and keep getting new customers is implementing a strong lead magnet to continue growing your email list. Your email list is probably one of your most valuable assets as a brand. Once they're captured, however you captured them, they're essentially free, in comparing to ads. So consider in the beginning creating a very strong lead magnet or an offer that allows you to capture their email. And in turn, you can convert them with various automations and campaigns. So you can offer a free ebook, which I'm sure we've all seen, a PDF guide, maybe a free gift. I would recommend something that's pretty low margins on your side. Maybe even creating a simple video in exchange for their email. And in turn, I would say Klaviyo is probably my favorite email automation tool. Developing a strong welcome flow. that lets that person know once they've given their email what your brand is all about. They've gotten to your store and they've already seen things, but remind them, show the customer why it matters. You provide value. What is it about your product that's different from the rest? Going back to the differentiation we spoke about in the beginning. You can even take it a step further. You have your lead magnet, right? They come to your store to fill it out, or maybe they want to purchase. You can add exit intents through Klaviyo, which is essentially a pop-up where if someone goes to your site and they're going to leave, a pop-up will appear prompting them to complete the lead magnet or whatever other offer you want to test out. This is another place where you're going to want to actively A/B test consistently. To take it a step further from there, use Google Analytics. Use your e-commerce store's platform to see which page are people leaving the most. What has the less amount of engagement time? Where is the biggest or highest bounce rate? That way you can strategically place these exit intents or whatever other lead magnets you like. And finally, I would say one of my favorite ways, one of the ways I would recommend for a quick way to get new customers is developing a winning ad strategy. Email, social media is more organic. The paid media side, because it's paid, will usually have faster results. And on Facebook, tends to be the best on returns compared to somewhere like Google. But here's where that brand message and product differentiation comes handy, especially as a new brand or even as a brand who's been in there for a while. I'm sure you will test this, Tyler, and you're really good at this, is before even launching your first ad or developing your first creative, you want to know your KPIs. At what cost should you be paying for that new customer, and at what overall ROAS should you remain profitable? A cold campaign that's targeting new people compared to maybe a campaign that's retargeting, old customers, which I'll talk about later. It's always going to be tougher. It's going to cost more. These are people who you're fighting for their attention. They're not like on a Google ad where they actually search for tennis shoes. You actually have to fight for them to stop scrolling. That being said, like you mentioned, your ad creative has to be great. You have to make sure you're testing everything from the ad copy, the creative, the video or the graphic, what landing page are they going to, and really continuously test this to, again, make sure it's matching with the KPIs you set out in the beginning.
And you kind of touched on it there, but that is my number one, which is just having a great understanding and grasp of your e-commerce finances. So creative output, willingness to test, and then finally having a grasp of your finances. And what I mean by that is understanding all of the expenses that go into delivering a product, all of the expenses that your business has from a fixed standpoint as overhead, whether that be agencies, employees, tools, things like that, so that you can work backwards from there to know, okay, what should my target CPA be in order for each purchase to be profitable? How many purchases per month do I need for that profitability margin to overcome the fixed expenses that I have? And those are things that you can kind of communicate to your ads team, for example, to be able to develop a procedure for scaling. So for example, let's say that okay, my product is $100, our average order value is $100, and our margins on that product are 80%. Our retention rate is also pretty good. About 20% of people come back and rebuy month over month. Okay, with a good retention rate, you can be a little bit more aggressive on that first purchase. You don't need to profit quite as much on that first purchase because you know that more often than not, people are coming back for additional purchases. So as long as you can break even or even make a little bit of profit on acquiring that customer, it's going to be worth it in the coming months when they repurchase. So kind of understanding your ability to be aggressive when you go out and scale. In that scenario, like I said, if the profit margin is 80% on a $100 AOV and we're getting a $50 CPA, we know that there's a $30 profit margin there. The client might say, hey, look, our retention is really good. The more customers we add, the quicker we're growing. Can we be a little bit more aggressive on that top of funnel acquisition? And you might say, yeah, we can double the amount of new customers that we're bringing in, but that ROAS might drop down from a 2-to-1 down to like 1.5. You'll be breaking even on those, but you won't be profiting on the first purchase anymore. Customer might say, yeah, let's do that because I want to acquire customers faster. Those types of decisions and strategies can really only be implemented, again, like I said, if you have a really clear understanding of what your unit cost metrics are and your fixed expenses. So examples of unit cost metrics or variable expenses might be obviously your ad spend, the cost of the product itself, the cost of shipping the product, the cost of fulfilling the product, your transaction fees. These are basically expenses that you take on every single time a customer places an order. Your fixed expenses are your expenses that are there whether you get 0 orders or you get 100 orders. Your storage facility, you're still paying for it whether you get orders or not. Your Klaviyo account, all of that, you're paying for regardless. So thinking about it that way, separating those and being able to, again, work backwards from there to set your metrics is super important. Um, Another tool that we use for this, again, specifically for Shopify is Lifetimely. You can plug in all of those fixed costs, custom, and then it will pull all of your variable costs, like your ad spend and everything like that, through integrations.
Right.
If you use WordPress, I think another one that's pretty comparable is Metric. You can kind of get a pretty close P&L statement there as well. But that's just kind of a start. The real juice of it is understanding those mathematical concepts on the back end yourself. But that's something that I think is super important for all stores, because like I said, you really have to be able to craft a strategy dependent on your budget and your goals. You don't want to just be spending ad spend blindly and then figure out in 2 months that you can't reorder inventory, or running into problems like that, or different roadblocks. So that's definitely my number one.
Okay. I would say for my number one, so we've talked about, differentiating your product, crafting your brand message story, and then from there, acquiring new customers. Now, this usually gets overlooked because you're thinking about acquiring new customers, but retention and finding ways to get customers to come back and continue to purchase is highly important. Because like I said earlier, like, it does cost you $20 per customer, new customer, sorry, and that puts you at breaking even or maybe a little bit less. That's fine if your lifetime value is 60. But if it costs you 20 and your lifetime value is 30, I don't think your issue there is attracting new customers. It's pretty much retention. And there's ways, again, now it's a golden era. There's a lot of tools at your disposal to use to see and learn how people are reacting to your brand and your product. One of the easiest ways I always recommend, especially when crafting my post-purchase emails, is using tools to add in surveys within that first email. You can use Klaviyo in combination with Hotjar or Typeform, so that once someone gets that first email after creating their purchase, you can lead them to a survey and ask them a series of questions to learn about not only the experience on the store, but what they thought about your product. You may want to ask them, where did they find you? Why did they purchase, or what competitors did they consider before yours? And I think one question that gets overlooked is, where did they find you? If you're using multiple ad platforms, we all know the iOS update and attribution is always tough to kind of pin down. But if you have a survey where most of your customers are responding and they're letting you know where they found you, this is going to help clear up a lot of questions. And consider adding in there the option friends and family, or referral, or word of mouth. Because if you see this option taking off compared to like Facebook or Google, this means you might have a great product and idea on your hands. Word of mouth is the best badge you can wear. So if people are actively talking about and recommending your product and referring it to friends and family, that means they not only loved it, but it worked really well. So definitely considering adding surveys and review follow-ups to a lot of your post-purchase. And this ties completely into further developing your email marketing strategy to retain more customers. So what exactly besides the survey are you telling them after their first purchase? Are you telling them the same thing as the second, third, fourth purchase? So developing that out, while it may take time, putting in the additional effort and care and intent could just grow that relationship with your brand more for people to continue coming back. Additional email automations that sometimes people don't consider is active on site. If I've given you my email and let's say I come to your store and I didn't even look at a product to get the browse abandon flow that people usually do, there should be an active on-site flow that sends an email to a user who's just on your site but didn't click on anything or didn't go to any product specifically. Tell them what's new on the store. What are some new updates? What are some of the top sellers? What are some new collections? That's actually a flow that could make $1,000, $2,000 a month in addition to the rest of your flows. Something to also consider is, depending on what platform you're using, sometimes you might just get a checkout abandon flow, which could be the trigger your cart Make sure you have two separate ones, people that abandon the cart and don't get the checkout, and people that are able to get the checkout but abandon the checkout. You want to make sure you have both, probably offer two different things. And when you're sending out campaigns, try segmenting your users. Make VIP segments, people who have made more than 3 purchases or have spent over $100. Send them something special. Cross-sell product offerings that make sense amongst each other. You can further segment that. And last but not least, also using your ad strategy that we talked about in the beginning and putting a portion of your budget to retain customers. And usually this is great because these campaigns don't take as much budget as a cold campaign does, right? It's easier to resell to somebody old than to sell to somebody new. And you can leverage these campaigns very easily. Let's say we talked about your survey, you learn an issue with your product. Maybe it's they don't understand how to use it. Maybe following up on a retention campaign on Facebook where you're promoting a video from the brand owner themselves, explaining how they like to use the product. Maybe it's not the brand owner, maybe it's an influencer or whatnot, but that would mean you're taking an issue that you're seeing from your survey and addressing it clearly with a retention campaign with a smaller budget on Facebook. And Facebook makes it really easy. You can upload customer lists, use their custom audience feature to refine your targeting. You can exclude customers as well on the new customer side acquisition strategy too. But ultimately, I would say, retention, aside from acquiring new customers, the other side of the coin is retaining them, making sure they're happy and continuing coming back.
And I think something that's been super useful for us in that regard has been the Klaviyo to Facebook integration, which, what that basically allows us to do is create segments in Klaviyo to implement a first-party data strategy on Facebook. So, for example, in Klaviyo, I can create a list of every single person that has ever purchased from our store, but hasn't purchased in the last 30 days. And that's a perfect audience to, for example, retarget on Klaviyo to make sure you're not losing that customer's lifetime value and bringing them back. And a good way to look at it is if you have consumable products, so whether it's a shampoo or a bag of gummies or something like that, you want to have a good idea of about how long that product usually lasts the customer. And you can gather that data through Google Analytics reports, such as average time between purchase, or if you just have an idea, it's a daily serving, there's 30 servings, and try to start to time some of these retention campaigns like Julian talked about through email or through Facebook to hit that customer around that point that they should naturally be purchasing again. Something else that I think a lot of digital marketers sleep on is direct mail. And, just for an example, we ran a campaign last month for a client that we have. The client sells like a B complex. It's a very specific niche that they target, and they run a subscription program. So our whole goal with this client has been get as many new customers onto the subscription program as possible. And one of the things we did last month was we sent a direct mailer to the mailbox of every single person who had ever purchased, but was not on a subscription. And we put a QR code for them to sign up for the subscription and save on a monthly delivery. That had great results. We got a ton of existing customers to move over onto the subscription. And having someone on subscription is always going to be the best way to retain them as a recurring purchase.
It's a great strategy. It's thinking outside the box. It's going back to the basics, the old marketing tactics people used to use. Like I said, I used to be in sales, cold calling lawyers. I would get lawyers to respond by faxing them over something. A lot of people forget about faxing. So it's a good way to think outside the box and finding new ways to just connecting with them and sending them the message you want to send them.
Yeah, of course. So I know that we just crossed the 30-minute mark. I think I pretty much got through all of the concepts that I wanted to address. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we kind of transition up?
No, I think this is great, honestly.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time. For those of you that joined, we appreciate your time as well. We're going to put a couple of helpful links in the description. So we've mentioned some different tools. We'll attach our full kind of like recommended tool stack to the subscription. We also have an online experts community where you're going to get a lot more knowledge about some of these concepts and strategies and things like that we've talked about. So whereas in this video, we've kind of briefly touched on a few things, in that group, you're going to get actual full breakdowns of all these different strategies. And it's actually free right now for the first 100 members. So definitely take advantage of that while you still can. We also offer the ability to do one-on-one consultations if you have a brand and you're looking to kind of talk to us about formulating a strategy or what might be best for you. So again, we'll drop all of those links in the description. Other than that, we're going to continue pumping out content on YouTube surrounding these topics. I actually have a video coming out on the full breakdown of that financial strategy that I talked about and how to kind of set those proper KPIs. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And other than that, again, thanks for joining us and have a great rest of your week.